Welcome to Capecchi Sessions. Hi, it's Nicole. And it's been a minute, almost a month since my last session. April was really busy. There was traveling and honoring a new graduate, and then I had to get back and take some time to settle back in and do some writing, a lot of writing. And there's something I want to talk about today that struck me as I was doing one of those writing sessions, and is why don't we tell our stories until we're in crisis? I found myself thinking about a conversation I had with a woman at the graduation party. It started out as casual, and she asked me something small, something innocent, and it somehow turned into me giving her a brief snippet of my life story. It was a case of, instead of how I met your mother, it was a case of how I met my brother. Um, and it's a story I don't share often. A few of my friends know about it. It's not something I put out for public consumption. And yet, there I was telling it to someone I had just met at a party. And I know you're wondering, and so I'll say it. My brother and I and a few other siblings met later in life. Same father, different mamas, but that story in and of itself is for another time. So when I sat down later, I kept asking myself, why so much detail on that story? Why then? Why her? And that question has brought me here today, and I thought it would be a great podcast for us to talk about, or for me to talk to you about. Let's be clear, this is a one-way conversation. But I will want to hear some responses, so we'll get to that at the end. So, what are we actually talking about when we talk about ourselves? I've always paid attention to conversations I'd been in, or I've overheard people share with me, as both as a friend and or someone in in context of the work I do. And I noticed something. When we tell our stories, we actually let someone in our lives. It's almost always a crisis story, a health scare, a divorce, a loss, a breakdown, a turning point, the kind of story that begins with everything fell apart and ends with, but I'm still here. And there's several stories and lanes that we kind of go into. It's either crisis or work or your children if you have them. Those are the lanes I found that people feel that they are safe in. That work, that crisis. Oh, my child did this. It is something that we know to gravitate to and people will listen to. Now, I want to be clear about this. I'm not doing this as a researcher. This is not a study. This is a storyteller who pays attention. And it's really based on my own personal interactions, my own observations. But as someone who listens, as someone who takes it all in, and I really mean listen, I find that crisis to be the dominant theme in how we narrate ourselves to other people. The quiet doesn't often make it into the story. The ordinary Thursday, the slow season, the mundane, and we all have those days. The thing that's happening right now doesn't have a dramatic arc yet. We leave that all out. And I find that fascinating. And I find it something that we should really kind of think about and pull apart. Why does crisis give us permission that an ordinary life doesn't? And here's what I think that's happening. Crisis gives us permission when something has broken open, when we've survived it, or when we're deep in the middle of it, when we stop asking ourselves whether the story is worth telling. We tell it because it has excuse me, we have to go somewhere with it because it's too big to hold on to alone. There's weight that requires a witness. Now, think about that. The weight of your story that you tell requires a witness. But what happened to the everyday story? The one where nothing dramatic happened, but something shifted. The quiet. The one when we're sitting and we're contemplating for weeks or days or hours, it doesn't matter. We keep that one quiet because we're not sure if it qualifies. We're not sure if it's earned the floor, so to speak. There's also something about the ending. We tend to want our stories to be resolved before we share them. Like we need to have gotten through it before we invite anyone else into it. Crisis breaks that rule because when you're in it, you can't wait. But the ongoing, unresolved, still unfolding story, we hold that one back. We say, I'm still processing, or the favorite, it's complicated. Or maybe we say, I'll write that down one day. Maybe. And sometimes that one day never comes. The story just lives within us, untold, which means, in a sense, a piece of us is untold. And I'm pausing during this because I kind of want you to feel the weight of what you don't say. Anyhow, as a storyteller, I believe that the stories we don't tell shape us. They inform how we move through the world, what we're afraid of, what we reach for. They're active, even in their silence. And there's something about naming them, even imperfectly, even without resolution, that releases some of that hold. And so I invite you to really think about yourself and the stories you tell. What would you tell if it didn't need a reason? And that's what I want to leave you with today. What is a story you haven't told because you're not protecting anyone else, but because you haven't quite given yourself permission to tell it? Not the crisis story, not the career story, not what your kid did this or they did that. The one that lives underneath all of that. The one that makes you swoon, the one that gives you the EBGBs, that story. The one that quietly shifted your worldview. Maybe it's a relationship that shaped you in ways that you haven't fully named. Maybe it's something from your childhood that you don't have neat language for yet. And maybe it's what this season of your life actually feels like. Not what you say when someone asks you how you're doing, but what is it really? And I get it. There are casual conversations and we all kind of do our politeness. Hey, how you doing? And then there are conversations that when somebody really wants to know, hey, how are you doing? You can tell the difference so you know what I'm talking about. On a personal note, for me, it was a story about my brother. A woman asked a simple question. Something in me decided it was time. I'm still not entirely sure why, but I think that's part of why I'm sitting here and talking to you about it now. I'm learning to trust that impulse, to let the story be out there before everything. And I can't say it's not finished. Um, we're writing our story, and I think that's the beauty of it. Um, that's the practice, though, not waiting for crisis to be the clearance, starting to tell a story now in whatever form it takes, a voice memo, a journal, a conversation at a party with a stranger you'll never see again. It counts. It all counts. And I leave you with that. So I thank you for coming to this session and giving a listen and for being patient with me after I went gallivanting around. I hope I gave you something to think about. And if something in this episode stirred you, and it stirs you in wanting to get off a story you're sitting on or a conversation you've been avoiding, I'd love to hear about it. You can um, find us on Instagram, on Threads, Blue Sky, or YouTube at Capecchi, or drop us an email at info@capecchi.com. Um, if you're thinking about putting something together on the page, we'll be opening submissions soon. But really, what is the story that you want to tell that doesn't begin and end in your crisis? That's all for now. I thank you for the time. Have the best day or night.